fieldwork cafeteria of Aureus K was filled shoulder to shoulder with workers in 5 long tables that stretched about 50 meters down the massive room. 100 of workers huddled around their food trays, chattering in their Polish-Spanish fusion, with a sprinkling of English to describe machinery. Siesk Bose. Lorne would hear this constantly muttered through the halls. Lorne followed Simon through the arcade of grey jumpsuit backs, all colour-coded with their respective clan. They got in line and collected trays as overworked men slopped piles of ambiguous food down. While in line, Lorne stopped in his tracks. She was 2 places in line ahead of him. Lorne thought of the many women he saw consistently on Earth. Why was he so drawn to her? Surely she was beautiful, but she was not the most beautiful lady Lorne had ever seen. Was his internal animalistic instincts taking hold as his nerves seemed to recognize he was so far away from Earth? Perhaps some primordial desire to reproduce in the face of extinction. Perhaps it was the testosterone evaporating off the sweaty skin of an ocean of hyper-masculine men who exist only to exert themselves. Perhaps this flurry of tension exists in the air like some fume that triggers human nature to expose itself. "Oh my," Lorne finally squeaked. She did not look back at him. Simon, following behind Lorne in line, smirked in amusement. "Hello, I am Lorne." He tried again. She glanced at him. "I am from the Global Examiner." As it left Lorne's mouth, he felt pathetic. "Okay," she finally said back. To this, Lorne looked back at Simon, who was clearly feeling second-hand embarrassment. Simon walked to the front of the line and began speaking to another security officer. "Are you from Mulsco?" Lorne asked. "I thought you were here to look into the asteroid mines," she said flatly. "Yeah, but I ought to get a feel for the entire facility," Lorne said, trying to be charming. She looked at him. Soft, gentle eyes. Then she blinked away his comment. "Do you like journalism?" Lorne asked shyly. "Yes, but I think yours could be better," she said, stepping over as the line moved simultaneously. "Oh," Lorne chuckled. "Any advice on how I can improve?" To this, she stepped back from the line with her plate now completed and utensils acquired. "Yeah," she said, looking at him one last time. "Stop being a kiss-ass." Then she walked away. Lorne stood there in amazement. Simon walked back over to him. "So did you court her?" He smirked. Then he began walking off. Lorne followed. They held their trays of food tightly, making their way through the commotion of workers chattering about their days. Rupert, in great popularity amongst his peers, was consistently embraced with handshakes and back pats as he followed behind Lorne. Lorne. "Hey, why don't you take a seat over here?" A gentle voice spoke, to the passing Lorne. Lorne looked at Simon, who did not seem to notice the proposal. Lorne looked down to see the man from across the hall, who Simon identified as Mr. Farrell, pointing at an empty space next to him. Lorne sat down. "Nice to meet you, Lorne. I am Mr. Farrell. Noticed you got a special little tour today," Mr. Farrell began. "Wonder what they let you see that they could not show the rest of us." "I doubt you missed out on much," Lorne said, taking a bite of his bland food. "Well, it seems the folks of Mulsco do not really appreciate the need for total transparency." "Total transparency is a lot to ask for," Lorne spoke, and his eyes were drawn to Mitz, whose round head could be seen emerging and submerging between the rows of workers in each step. "Yeah. Well, it was what was agreed upon. Not the reality they agreed upon that they love to bring up." Mr. Farrell sounded frustrated. "May I ask you where you are from?" Lorne asked. "What firm I mean? I heard Simon talking to you while exiting sleeping quarters. I am a delegate of the business committee sector," Mr. Farrell said. "Wait, you work for the state?" Lorne was surprised. "And you told me your name. I am not a social worker who is at risk of being murdered by some radicalized, unregistered vagrant after work. My role in delegation requires me to have the fluid communication needed. Often that communication requires a transparency that calls for proper nouns and proper introductions." He passed his hand over to Lorne for a handshake. Lorne shook his hand. "So, you are here with an intention to evaluate Mulsco?" Lorne asked. "Yes, and to be frank, I am not impressed. Of course, I alone do not garner the authority to discontinue this operation. But my findings will be considered during the upcoming elections. If the committee does find my complaints hold merit, well, just put it this way. The state is already exhausted with the antics of Mulco. They are just waiting for an excuse." Mr. Farrell spoke low, his eyes never leaving Lorne's. "You feel comfortable speaking this freely here?" Lorne's anxiety was building. He looked further down his table. Perhaps 60 people down, he could see Rupert entertaining the folks around him with an animated story. Perhaps he was telling his comrades about the incident in the caves earlier. Or maybe he was ranting about all the ridiculous things the Earthman from the Global Examiner had said. "No, not at all, if I am completely honest with you," Mr. Farrell said, glancing in Simon's direction. Lorne looked also. How could this man be so reckless involving Lorne? So you must feel pretty alone here. All this distance from your home. Trapped here to observe a business you have little faith in. Must be scary. Lorne kept his eyes on his tray of food. Scared at times, yes. But I am not alone, Mr. Farrell said. There are others from the state here, Lorne asked. Lorne, the cause I fight for is deeper than any bureaucratic clash of powers, Mr. Farrell began. It is even deeper than my career as a statesman. So you did not come alone, Lorne answered his own question. I arrived here alone, though my cause has grown. People are waking up, Lorne. It is only a matter of time before the rest do as well, so I am no longer alone. He spoke low, but confident. He had a suave demeanor that Lorne was beginning to admire, but also a courage that Lorne longed for. You poached Mulsco workers to support your cause. Lorne looked down the table to see the medical examiner known as Hijam attentive to his food tray. Poached? No. Recruited? Yes, Mr. Farrell said. Like who? Lorne asked. Until I know I can actually trust you, I must keep my fellow conspirators in the shadows, Mr. Farrell responded. Though no matter how you feel towards my cause, it does not change my concern for you, Lorne. Why are you concerned about me? Lorne asked. Because I have not been able to reach with my last contact since we boarded this asteroid, Mr. Farrell said solemnly. He also worked for press, though he was internal, from Mulsco. As the words left Mr. Farrell's mouth, Lorne could feel the moisture accumulate on his temples. It was a hard bribe. He did not trust me. Thought I was trying to set him up. Poor guy. I finally got him to agree. And poof. Gone. Mr. Farrell added. He was talking about Marston. Marston was not a plant. He was working with state conspirators to expose Mulsco. And now, he was gone. Hey, Jim. It's me, Lorne. Lorne said, waving a few men down the table at the medical examiner. Hijam looked at him as if he did not understand him. Mr. Farrell, confused by Lorne's abrupt departure from the conversation, said discreetly, Oh, try asking him again. Hijam. Over here, Lorne said again to get an actual response from Hijam this time. Yes. Hijam seemed confused. Hey, how's your tour been looking over the medbay? Lorne said eagerly as he realized he had Hijam fully engaged now. Good. Great. Why do you ask? He responded. Mr. Farrell looked curiously at Lorne, wondering what called for the drastic change in conversation. I was going to ask if they have already synced you up with the vital sign database, Lorne said. Well, of course. I am a Mulsco member now, he responded, still with a tone of uncertainty. So would you be able to check out and compare the vital count records from the guest? Lorne asked. Hijam's eyes fluttered with the excitement that he would be able to display his newly learned skill sets. Yes, of course, he said, scrolling on his wrist tablet. Okay, right here. It says on our departure there were 48 registered vital signs on board. Okay. Now can you check what the vital signs were when we arrived and boarded? Lorne asked. Sure. Hijam scrolled more and paused. He seemed he did not want to say what he saw. On arrival there were 47 registered vital signs. So someone was deceased, Mr. Farrell said. He looked at Lorne with confusion. It appears so, Lorne said. Somehow debris had punctured his window, pierced right through. It likely suffocated him in his sleep, while altering the pressure system. Mr. Farrell stared at the ceiling of the large mess hall in sorrow. This method of removal is not uncommon. You know Galileo Moon's company? Lorne answered. The corporation that vowed to build 600 different high-tech moon bases across Jupiter's orbit in the next 40 years. Mr. Farrell continued. They had interest in this area. They found the increased cost of materials from Mulsco was becoming less and less cost-effective. So, for the last few decades, they have been working to decrease Mulsco's influence, while simultaneously obtaining their old extraction facilities. So Galileo Moon's company is who? You guys plan on handing off Aureus K to? Lorne asked. Was. Not anymore, though. Upon being given access to a tour facility, their team of delegates all died mysteriously. The autopsies revealed suffocation and pressure. It was as if they were exposed to the unforgiving conditions of space in their sleeping quarters, Mr. Farrell said. Just like that, you think Mulsco got them wiped? And Galileo just backed off Aureus K. To Lorne, it felt unreasonable to assume a few assassinations would deter a force as powerful as Galileo Moon's company from their campaign against Mulsco. Well, they did as most octopus companies do when they realize their tentacles are too closely intertwined with other neighboring octopus companies. They gave themselves space and altered the status quo so that it could work for both sides. Now they are back in agreement, for now. And Galileo even traded moon real estate for access to more resources. What Mr. Farrell just said reminded Lorne of the moon real estate properties that Mr. Bruck had spoken of in privacy of his exercise chamber. Yet somehow Molsko is still at risk of losing its state-sanctioned influence here. Even if Molsko was given other things, they would lose influence like a snowball effect if they lost access to asteroids like this. Lorne responded. Precisely. Mr. Bruck tried to play chess, and gained a little bit only to lose a lot more. They were willing to give him the moons because they knew it was destined to fail Lorne. Because when Molsko loses access to its infinite supply of resources, they would surely not be able to sustain their newly acquired endeavors. So Mr. Bruck is scrambling right now. He wants the best of both worlds. New Moon real estate and the economic powerhouse of his extraction mines. Why would he be dumb enough to think he would have any leverage with the state if this asteroid has such little output? We all know this asteroid is running dry. That's because the asteroid itself might be dry. But the supply isn't. Lorne, this man has been rigging the market and stashing away the vast majority of his product. Mr. Farrell answered. Where? There is no way that amount of supply could go unnoticed. Molsko would get exposed trying to transport that amount of commodity. Lorne asked. I do not think he ever moved it. I believe it is in this facility somewhere. Mr. Farrell grinned. That is insane. There's a million diagrams and maps. We are all shown that. Lorne began but was interrupted. That they always show us a little bit more that they seem to have left out before each other time, right? Mr. Farrell finished for him. Another reminder to Lorne that just like the oxygen and water provided to each room by Molsko so far from Earth, so was the information. Controlled, compartmentalized and vetted. There is no way they would show either of us that even if it was true, Lorne said, looking around. That is why we are using this time to strike at his vulnerabilities, Lorne. We must inform the world what really goes on here. I alone cannot change this. I need the operation to fold upon itself, Mr. Farrell said. Well, what if you end up like Master? Lorne said. We are trapped here. That shuttle we arrived in is our only exit. Our only exit. Yes, Lorne. But we do not have to go with the information. I have a contact in the broker department above us, Lorne. They will relay the information to our contacts in Mars. We just have to make sure we can get the information to the brokers. And she can send it out. It will work as a distress beacon. There we will. Mr. Farrell tried to continue, but Lorne interrupted. She, Lorne asked. They will relay our distress beacon from the broker pods. The same thing they use to transfer information to Mars so they can order their Mole's mold crates. Mr. Farrell continued, realizing his excitement almost exposed. Her. Then what? Lorne said. We die, Molsko retaliates by killing off our families, and we become another example of why not to fuck with corporations. Lorne looked at Mr. Farrell with a frustration. How could this man be so naive, so hopeful, so willing to sacrifice lives like cannon fodder for such a futile goal? Lorne, we were born to be herded by shepherds we trusted to protect us from wolves, not realizing the shepherd are a much greater threat to our lives and liberties than any natural predator. Mr. Farrell said lowly, so what? We expose this place. The state removes Molsko and a new fleet of security comes out and replaces the last. Then Galileo moons, Venus orbital citadels, or Gravity Ultra comes and takes over. What's to say they will be any more ethical than Molsko? Lorne said. Wings of the same bird. We used to say that a lot. I do not blame you for questioning the uncertain future. But don't you see, in a hierarchy of things, people and ideas, what reigns supreme? Mr. Farrell said, nodding his head. Excuse me? Lorne asked. They want the commodity, the resource, the thing, the gold, the silver, the oil, the Mole's mold, the capital. You say you're concerned for the people. Those existing in the here and the now. I tell you, both these variables are all dependent of a supreme source. Mr. Farrell paused. Ideas. Lorne filled in. Yes, Lorne. Ideas, principles, real integrity. We won't live forever, Lorne. But the ideas we can spark will, and they will have lasting consequences that surpass our finite time to experience this thing called life. Mr. Farrell's words' weight seemed to slam against the heart of Lorne. If I did agree to help, what could I do? Lorne said it almost so low, Mr. Farrell had to lean in. Just do what you do best, and I'm going to do what I do best. The words slithered from Mr. Farrell's mouth like serpent. It was the same words Marston said. What is that? Lorne asked with his eyes fixed on his hands emerging from beneath the table. Mr. Farrell pulled a small device with stealth from his palm. Lorne examined the device in his hand and worried. Were you recording this conversation? If anyone asks you speak Korean, don't worry, no one will ask to prove its authenticity to verify. Already tested it during the band performance. Mr. Farrell chuckled. I yelled death to Mr. Bruck during the performance in Korean. Not a soul noticed. Lorne looked around to see the nearby workers looking at them with amazement. What the hell is that? They are looking at us, Lorne whispered. Mr. Farrell clicked the button. "Is everything all right, Lorne?" A blue pulse emitted from the device, and suddenly he had heavy European accent. "What?" Lorne said lowly. "Were you speaking Chinese, comrade?" A nearby worker asked Lorne. Mr. Farrell winked. The device he had somehow altered anyone nearby's voice to a specific language frequency to others outside the designated radius. His statesman had been altering his voice this way entire time. To the unexpected, he was speaking Korean, despite his obvious European origins. "Sir, you have been requested by Mr. Bruck to join his table." A guard appeared behind Lorne, causing even Mr. Farrell to be startled. "Me? He wishes to speak to me again?" Lorne turning around to see the bearded guard known as Rand behind him. "Yes. He is in a neighboring observatory room watching over us," the guard said while pointing to a metallic window panel overlooking the cafeteria. "Oh, he is just up there," Lorne said, trying to discreetly hide his dreadful gulp. "Just watching." "Yes. Don't bother bringing your food tray. There is food upstairs." Mr. Farrell waved goodbye as Lorne slid away from his tightly packed seat. Lorne followed Rand up a stairway, from a door to the side of the cafeteria. From above, there he approached a large couch where Mr. Bruck sat by himself observing out the window that overlooked the filled, bustling cafeteria. In front of the couch was a small table with several appetizers, dishes, things Lorne never seen in person. Huge pieces of shrimp wrapped in bacon, kebabs with various grilled vegetables. Lorne had not realized how deprived he was of a meal made with the consumer's pleasure in mind. Lustful is the only way Lorne could describe his feeling. The glistening color gradient of the sweet bacon skin wrapped around the shrimp looked like something out of a fiction to him. How could food look so attractive? How could people live with such pleasures without falling into the sin of excessive consumption? "Lorne, please seat," Mr. Bruck said at the sound of the door closing behind Lorne. Lorne turned around to see Rand was gone. It was once again just Lorne and Mr. Bruck. For such a well-spoken socialite, it is hard to see you eat alone, Lorne said with a tactically friendly smile as he sat down next to him. "Socialite? Not me. My social fuel is very limited, Lorne," Mr. Bruck said with a light-hearted voice. It was bizarre. Though Lorne had observed the cordial politeness displayed many times from Mr. Bruck, it seemed though with Lorne, Mr. Bruck showed genuine respect, as if they were friends, or at the very least, trustworthy. "I take it as you like your circle small," Lorne said, leaning to a more comfortable position. "Good eye, Lorne. It is a mind-boggling to me that you had to climb through such demeaning communes and placements to become a journalist. It is obvious you are built for it, born for it." As Mr. Bruck delivered his bizarrely packaged compliment, Lorne found himself back in a state of paranoia. But this time, Lorne knew his silence would only drag him deeper off his guard. He needed to be alive and present. He needed to be fluid in communication, like Mr. Farrell. "So, looks like you are privy to my past," Lorne said. "And to think I was foolish enough to think you chose me for my writing." "Lorne, I chose you for your writing," Mr. Bruck said. "Why have you not eaten anything yet? You think this is all for me?" Maintaining his grace as he snatched the bacon-wrapped shrimp and swallowed it in a few bites was impossible. Mr. Bruck gleefully watched, like a chef presenting his masterpiece to his guests. Or even more accurately, an owner allowing his dog to try new treats. And Lorne felt for it, even if the pleasures of the delicious food were undeniable enough to impede all other fears for a moment. But as the blissful food matter went down Lorne's esophagus, that moment quickly ended, and in its place was the revelation that a dog was exactly what Lorne was. And Mr. Bruck was the one who fed him. That was fantastic, Lorne said, overwhelmed with such a temporary but needed satisfaction. "Yes, Lorne, it may be your first, but it doesn't have to be your last." Mr. Bruck nodded his head. "I think we both know there is no real way those artificial intelligence-ran machines are actually capable of discerning who is worth the satisfactions of life and who is meant to provide the worthy with the means." "Well, you clearly are aware I was destined for Mulsco ports on Mars' surface," Lorne answered. "But something told me I was destined for something better." "I see that," Mr. Bruck said. "I see that you are capable of even surprising yourself with the impact you can create in one lifetime. I find myself baffled constantly. So you are not upset that I went through all of that to get transferred out of Mulsco?" Lorne asked, looking out the window at the cafeteria. "No. In fact, I am proud of you, Lorne. You stood up to the predetermined fate that they assigned you. I just wish you understood this is all evidence of the power you hold within you." Mr. Bruck smiled at Lorne. Lorne, either gullible or just overwhelmed with the recognition, was becoming hypnotized by Mr. Bruck's words of empowerment. "You think it was my destiny to rise above all those trials and tribulations? And to end up here?" Lorne asked. "A destiny that you paved. Because destiny is not up to the system we often accuse of holding us back. It is inside the individual who stares down the challenge of becoming their true self. Mr. Bruck said, looking deep into Lorne's eyes. I need this residence, dear Mr. Bruck. I need it more than I have ever needed anything, Lorne said softly. And I will do whatever you need to achieve that. Okay, I need your loyalty. Men down there will give their lives for me, though their lives mean so little to the greater picture. Mr. Bruck looked at the window to see both Fabian and Simon talking amongst each other in private. Lorne, do you believe the system should be fair? Lorne froze. Was it a trick question? What did he mean? Impulsive or integral to who he is, Lorne spoke. Yes, he looked at Mr. Brucks, who was grinning, and continued. People like me, people like us should have the opportunity to surpass those who are incapable or do not desire responsibilities that come with upward mobility. Indeed. But don't you see that altering the ecosystem is the true mark of superiority? Animals can fight to reign supreme for millions of years only to stay stagnant in their place. But humans turned the environment into a machine that quickly conquered the world lawn. Because we are superior, Mr. Bruck said. How are we to know the genuineness of the ecosystem if the participants of the hierarchy are rigging the system? Lorne asked, dropping his guard. Two lions approach each other on a small cliff. One, much larger, fiercer, and deadly, sits below the cliff, while the other, smaller, weaker, and undetected, sits above watching the other. So if the smaller lion kills the other by surprise, and with its uphill advantage, would you say that is flaw in the system? No. Clearly the smaller lion is smarter, which caused him to prevail. Lorne answered. He wanted to reign supreme more, so he did what he must to make those circumstances that way. We must do what we must, Lorne. To reign supreme. I just want agency of my life. I want to help my family's lives. The last of them, that is, Lorne said, looking at the food again. Eat, Lorne. Eat, but know there is so much more, and there will continue to be more if you are willing to do what you have to make your own odds better. Lorne found himself confronted with everything he wanted. Was his arm being twisted behind him to achieve this dream? Or was it all perceived by him to cope with the principles he felt he was surrendering? But what was he truly surrendering? Bitterness. Perhaps an impulsive hate of the establishment because it did not work for him. What if it starts working for him? Would his principles be out the window? Are they now? He took another shrimp-wrapped bacon, but savored it this time. Four weeks ago, the office was nearly empty, besides a handful of employees sanitizing their desk before their departure, flipping his desk monitor off. As his holographic city mapping system simmered to nothing like dying embers, Lorne heard footsteps approaching from his rear. Lorne, my boy, stay put for a moment, will you? Sorry, I got a hot date. Say it's with my mother, and your ass is canned, Barry said with a laugh. It's not. It is with your sister. Lorne gave a devilish grin. Barry plopped his bottom at a desk next to Lorne and scooted to get closer. What is it, Barry? Lorne said while turning over to see his boss, who was facing him but with his eyes to the corner. We got a pretty amazing offer today. Up Top's put it on us. And the compensation is good. You don't seem jazzed enough for it to be that good. Why not announce it to the whole department? Lorne asked. Because the offer only stands for one of us. Weird way to brag, asshole. Lorne spouted. And it's you. Me? Lorne was shocked. What are the Up Tops offering? D-level residence, Barry said. What? That is insane. You are not even D-level, Barry, Lorne said, trying to keep his volume low. So you are jazzed, right? Barry said with a reassuring look. Okay, what's the catch? Molsko. Barry responded sharply. What about them? They are the ones commissioning it. It's for them. If they are pleased with the outcome, the whole department is going to get massive improvements to our infrastructure, and the Molsko administration told us they are more than happy to compensate them with a D-level commune center. You can have a family there, Lorne. Or bring your siblings. God damn it, Barry. You know how I feel about Molsko. Jump off the soapbox, Lornal. You think it was going to be an exposé article on Venus orbital citadels? Besides, I didn't choose you. You're running an amusement park because this conversation is a fucking roller coaster, Barry. They chose you, Lorne. Barry looked at the floor while Lorne absorbed the information. You know I got love for you, Lorne. Since we took you in our team, you have done our department great. Even if they have you running around the city doing errands. You brought your struggling refinery boy work ethic and we love you for it. But fuck, man. Believe me when I say I would take this offer in a heartbeat. What would they do if I said no? Lorne asked them. I do not think they even know objection to a task is allowed, but I'll tell you what. You will be throwing me, us, out to dry if you do this. If they go to North Star News or Planetary Outlet, I'm sure they can find someone they want. Why me? Lorne asked. There was a link attached to the request that had your memoirs of the refineries article. I guess it's the GE are not the only ones impressed with your flowery wording. Great, they probably think I am an ardent state supporter or anti-corporate. Probably snap my neck as soon as I leave Earth's orbit. Come on, Lorne. I vouched for you to get here. Stuck my ass out. Please do not fuck me. The department. They want a response today. Barry said, looking frustrated. Barry, I have already worked 11 hours. I am on my way out. We can talk about it tomorrow. Today, Lorne, Barry said and stood up. Lorne sat there. He was safe. He did not have to go anywhere if he did not want. Sure, they could fire him. Sure, he could get demoted. But he is back on Earth after a lengthy stint in the refineries of Mars. Surely he could find new employment in Earth. Surely in the city. Around Cedric and Junip. Surely. The doubts crept in. He tapped his wrist tablet and called Cedric. He answered almost immediately. Steam from the dishwashing room fogged the screen. Hello? What's up? I'm real busy. Got a bit of a dilemma, brother. Well, that's just great. Can't really do with more bad news right now, Lorne. Cedric said while dodging past a crowded room with service agents squeezing through any space available. While holding trays above their heads. Watch out, asshole. The waiter yelled at Cedric as he slipped between two overwhelmed workers. Well, what is it, Lorne? Spit it out. Nothing. Don't mention it, Lorne said, feeling shame for the opportunity he was hiding. If it brings me peace, believe me, I won't. I guess it's my turn to reveal the bad news. Junip got her results in for her placement score. It's bad, Lorne. Real bad. They gave her the same score as you, Cedric said. A PEP. They think she is a problem starter, an agent of chaos. She is the smartest girl in her class by a long shot. Where is she getting tested? Lorne said, furious. At her commune. Of course I was not there. But I am going to have to walk her down to the commune centre about 4 weeks from now to get her registered. Lorne, this is bad. The mining labour demand is high, and they have been sending young adults left and right. Lorne looked at his black monitor screen, then his wrist tablet, then Barry, who was tapping a stylus pen on his forehead facing a nearby lamp. Cedric, he said fast. Yeah, bro, Cedric answered. I love you. I am going to be gone for a while. I'll give you the details when I get home today, Lorne said, clicking his wrist tablet off. He stood up and walked to Barry's desk. Lorne woke from the guest roll-up canopy they had stationed for all the guests around the cafeteria. An audio buffer to help people sleep made only the vibrations of Lorne's feet leaving his hanging bed noticeable. But no one heard. Lorne did not know what he was doing. Perhaps it was anxiety. Perhaps the sound buffer made him feel unnatural. But he maneuvered through the hanging beds quickly to avoid attracting attention. Everyone was asleep, Lorne was sure. A corridor on the other side of the cafeteria became his destination. A small light that would go unseen by the uncurious flickered from an opened door down the hall. Lorne continued to walk, and the sound of his steps became more pronounced as he stepped further from the audio buffer. As he got closer, he could see the light was not flickering. It was a stagnant light, and someone's arm was over it, causing shadows to interrupt the soft radiating light. Lorne stepped into the room to see a silhouette of a man standing over something while moving his arms. As Lorne stepped closer, he could see the bald head, the pale skin. It was the pale man. Hello, Lorne said quietly. Hello, the man responded, but never turned around from his current activity. What is your name? Lorne asked. I am Graham. You go by Lorne, yes? Graham answered. He had a gentle voice. Yes, yes, Lorne answered. Glad you asked. I hate my real name. Why? Graham asked. Because it just sounds weird, Lorne answered. Being weird to me just means being unapologetically you. There is nothing wrong with you, Graham said. What are you doing? Lorne stepped forward, but Graham jerked up as if he was trying to conceal what he was doing. Lorne stepped back quickly. Well, I will stay back here. You can keep touching yourself. Graham turned his head and glared at Lorne, but then broke the awkwardness with a chuckle. I'll show you when I am done. His arms kept moving and it became apparent there was something in his lap. Got it, Lorne laughed lowly. Can I ask what your job is? Are you from Moles? Yes, I am a Moles employee. I am an auditor. Only it's for labor opposed to commodities or equipment, Graham said. Labor auditor. So like people? You are like census for Moles? Lorne asked. Not exactly. Census is for the public knowledge and betterment of the state to manage its population. I am strictly here to evaluate how much labor potential we have based off calculations and metrics. Graham's voice never strayed from calm. Oh, so you are here to see how much more work you can squeeze out these guys? Lorne chuckled. There is not a nicer way to say it, Graham responded. Nicer. Right. How do you even get chosen for a job like that? You must have went to some advanced academies, Lorne said, trying to flatter the mysterious pale man named Graham. I am neurologically deficient, as they say. They unfortunately do not tell me what I have, just my placement score, and that I am extremely proficient in math. Which I am, so I suppose it was a strategic choice, Graham said. Neurological deficient is a name given by bureaucrats who have no clue what they are talking about. It's a catch-all phrase. Even if you are hardwired a little different, deficient implies it's a problem. Sounds to me like you were born with a gift, Lorne said. He turned around and looked at Lorne up and down. Thank you, Lorne, Graham said. Did you want to be a journalist? Not exactly, but I fell in love with it. I managed on getting here, Lorne said. What do you love about journalism? Graham asked softly. It's an opportunity to address reality and confront it with facts. It's an opportunity to see the dark and the light and craft a narrative that enlightens everyone. It's an opportunity to show the world the horrors and the beauty it is capable of, while bringing it back to the humbling truth that we are all just humans in the end. Lorne was getting carried away. Yes, Lorne. Yes, it sounds to me that you are an artist. Graham spoke. In a way, yeah. But I also feel that art is almost too ethereal for me. It's too open to interpretation. I need a tangible reality, a time and place, or people and subjects to observe and report, not just feelings. Art may be ethereal, but the concepts and ideas live forever, Graham said. I suppose ideas reign supreme. Lorne, feeling the shame of his mixed feelings stir in his chest, Graham finally turned around, revealing what he was doing. The light was from a small portable multi-stabilizer placed upside down. He had it on the very lowest setting while he was carefully carving a sculpture with a clump of mole's mold. The sculpture was of a dove. Wow. You made that, Lorne said, impressed. But as he stepped forward, his admiration slipped away when he realized what he had done. Graham's hands and part of his neck were covered in heavy radiation poisoning scars. He was recklessly using the multi-stabilizer to melt down the clump of mole's mold to be moldable enough to carve his artwork. Graham, are you insane? Lorne nearly yelled. Quiet, Lorne. It is okay, Graham said. No, it is not. You're a fucking toast, man. I can already see the radiation poisoning on your hands. That is the point of no return. You are going to die. Lorne was panicked for this odd man. How long do you reckon I have? Graham asked calmly. Could not tell you, but not long, Lorne answered. Well, what if I told you after doing this I finally feel content with it all ending? Graham asked. Doing what? Microwaving yourself with a tool that can change the properties of matter? Lorne asked, flustered with this man's chaotic decision. But I created this, he said, picking up his dove sculpture with his hands that bled through the many newly acquired cracks and burns. I made art. What I was meant to do. What I am supposed to do. Lorne, what I always wanted to do. He slammed the dove on the table. His bloody hands left a trail of residue. You are insane, Lorne said lowly. Insane to me just means being unapologetically you. There is nothing wrong with you, Graham responded. Why did you do this? Lorne asked. Because, Lorne, you and I have a place we are destined for, not what they have destined for us, Graham said, and Lorne was lost. Destiny? You may not get this, but I have a destiny, one I worked hard for, one I am so close to reaching. You are insane and alone on this, Graham. You just probably killed yourself to make some arts and crafts that will be forgotten and lost to time. In a state of confusion, Lorne was both concerned for him and almost spiteful. Almost, but part of him understood. However, a mental wall created in the cafeteria observation couch with Mr. Bruck was now fortifying Lorne. Something realer than hope. An actual way out. De-residence for Juniper, Cedric and him. Lorne. Art is not always a painting or a sculpture. Sometimes it's transcending your truth to something timeless. Graham picked up his sculpture again. Lorne stepped back slowly. Before he walked away, he looked at the sculpture one last time. It was beautiful. Far too artistic to be just an auditor's hobby. Mr. Bruck sat in the observation chair overlooking the cafeteria once again as the guests got ready from their hammocks. Only this time, he had Simon sitting beside him. To their rear, Mitz stood awaiting orders. Simon. So I understand the problematic one was not working alone. No. I suspect he has accomplices, but I am uncertain if they are on this asteroid, Simon answered. Well, certainly whatever cabal is working against my favor is bigger than just a man. He may have been reckless, but I do not suspect that he is willing nor capable of planning and executing a suicide mission. But why do you suspect that he is alone amongst the ship? Did he have any history with any other guest? Mr. Bruck responded. Well, Simon paused. He knows Lorne. But I'm not convinced Lorne is working against us. Why is that? Mitz blurted. If I may ask. Simon turned his head slowly to Mitz, who was avoiding eye contact. Because we have something he needs. Tell me about it. Mr. Bruck laughed. They both looked at Mr. Bruck with just enough confusion to warrant an explanation. Just to get him more motivated to do our requested assignments, I made sure the stakes were higher. You offered him an even nicer reward, Mitz asked. No. I had his little sister score rigged to sub-I-communes. I made it so he would be damning her off to the minefields if he did not agree to do what he needed to prevent it. So, it would be foolish for Lorne to betray us. But he's still good, as there is clearly someone working against us. Mitz rose his voice, then lowered it when he saw Mr. Bruck glaring. I have another person who seems far more likely a candidate. Simon finally gave Mr. Bruck reason to break eye contact. The statesman. He has made passive-aggressive remarks on multiple occasions about not being shown enough. I forgot we had a state worker, Mr. Farrell. Probably getting his pockets lined by Gravity Ultra, or Mitz fumed but was shut down. Your job is to be aware of those things, am I wrong? Simon snapped at Mitz. Mr. Farrell has asked about our inventory a few times. I heard a worker tell him that the storage was in the shipment area. He inquired that we had more. How does he know? Mr. Bruck said. We have more than what's in the shipment area, Mitz asked. Yes, Mitz. 70% of product is stored away. Why? Mitz asked, and Simon took a deep breath, trying to ease his nerves. Because if this asteroid is going to someone else, they are going to inherit a hollowed-out rock. That's impossible to land on. Mr. Bruck answered. When supply goes down and demand goes up, we will use the storage to help facilitate our newly inherited bases. Simon looked out the window. His eyes loomed over Lorne. Then they drifted off to Mr. Farrell. Anyone working against us is no longer welcome on the asteroid. Thus, they are trespassing by default. A crime that is punishable by death. Mr. Bruck said. Mitz shook his head eagerly. What is the new directive, sir? Simon asked. Eliminate all traitors, Mr. Bruck answered. They both looked down the window to see a tour guide lifting a blue card. Mr. Farrell, amongst others, got in line. Sir, are you not worried that it will bring suspicion if we return to Earth without the statesman? Mitz asked. The suspicion is reduced when there is no reason to believe it's targeted, Simon answered while standing. Both Mitz and Mr. Bruck tried to see what he was looking at, as it was not Mr. Farrell or Lorne. It was the man holding the blue card Mr. Farrell was grouped with. Mr. Bruck grinned when he realized what Simon was implying. Take them isolated and take them out, Mr. Bruck said. Approximately 8 years ago. Wake up, Osmond. Come on, Osmond responded. We can sleep through a few orange flashes. These aren't orange, Ozzy. Wake the fuck up. Osmond's eyes snapped open to see his comrade Aleski peering into his with a purple hue smothered across every surface not beneath its shadow. He leaped out the bunk. Where is Noel? Osmond said, fastening his jumpsuit. He is already helping with the turret. We got to go. Osmond, hurry. Aleski said, with Osmond sprinting behind him into the hall behind many more men scrambling to find where they are needed most. A blasting sound occurred, and then sound ceased as people across the hall were ripped into burnt shreds that were being quickly sucked into the massive hole that was just created. Quickly, Osmond was shoved off by Aleski, and they began running the other direction, with the survivors of the last blast now following them. Another blast occurred, and the lighting discontinued as the men's screams became muffled by space. The horror of the purple lasers encroaching upon the flailing limbs of panicked men caused some men to freeze in fear. A door slid open where several men were quartered off, trying to bring men in. Aleski and Osmond ran that direction to see them get vaporized in one blast. The intercoms began playing. Attention. We are under attack. Foreign adversaries have invaded and hijacked our ally ships and are using it to fire upon us. We intercepted a relay warning us by head of security logistics. Defend the asteroid at all cost. Again? Aleski yelled while jogging with Osmond behind them. What did you expect, Aleski? They did it once. We fired at them, and they left. Now they are back with an armada, Osmond said, pressing keys into a door. Yeah. How the fuck are they hijacking an armada of our ships? What did they do rob a carrier ship? Aleski said while looking into Osmond's eyes. Osmond thought about it, but that meant something so terrible, so inconceivable. They had lost communication for months. Their only way of communicating with the outside world is through relay pods that were left unanswered. Yet somehow before this attack they received a warning transmission. Who fired first, Osmond thought. The door slid open in a massive dome-shaped room with a massive device that resembled a high-powered telescope sitting in the middle. Only there were 4 men running around it pulling different levers so that massive laser defense cannon could aim and adjust to the attackers. Ready, Noel yelled. Osmond looked at his brother, who was sitting positioned with his arm cranking a large lever that was adjusting the vertical mobility of the cannon. On the other side was another man positioned to adjust the right side of the cannon using crank that was just as large, giving him agency of the horizontal adjustments. Standing on the top at a platform was a scout. He yelled grid coordinates so each man could aim their dimensional jurisdiction. Then on the scout's command of fire, he tells the projectile distance dispatch, when and how much distance to allow the beams to project. 1 second. The scout yelled at. He corrected his goggles beneath the scope. Let it rip. X220 and Y80. Send them 2.5 A units. The room glowed yellow only to blossom into a blue beam overhead. No collision. The scout yelled. Damn, Noel yelled. Osmond, tell Oleski he must go to the bridge and warn Norton. They have company-grade docking drill attachments on the nose of these ships. They intend to board. I'm right here, comrade, and I heard all. Oleski said, running through the massive shifts and vibrations of the bombardments going both ways. We are going to have to arm the workers, but we need Norton's authorization to get into the armory. Oleski shook his head, looking both horrified by the circumstances but also in complete understanding that his task was essential. So he sprinted out after giving Osmond a look of uncertainty. Osmond made his way to his brother's side. Ozzy, we might be really fucked. None of this makes sense, Noel. We lost communication, but somehow we managed on getting a transmission warning us of an armada of our own ships that had been hijacked. Osmond stood by his brother, but his brother was too focused in his task. X-234 Y-71, send them 2 A units. The scout yelled and the men complied swiftly. Osmond, now is not the time to question. There is not enough room to have you help me crank this, but you know what you can do. Noel said, then shot a twisted smile at his brother. Yeah, just like Mum and Dad. Guess this is how we go in this lineage. Osmond said, come on, don't mope. We need the encouragement. Ain't that right, Skellers? Noel said while yelling the last part of the scout. No one is going to cry for me, but I sure as hell would love someone to pray. But I'll take a mantra if that's all I can get. The scout named Skellers yelled while simultaneously lining the next shot. X-310 Y-80. 2 A units. Fire, Skellers said. Fuck me, Osmond yelled. But if I could, a snickering projectile dispatcher said while eagerly awaiting his next orders. Osmond climbed halfway up the cannon, just beneath the scout so both sides could hear. We are Mull's force, Osmond yelled while hanging from the pivoting machine. United in company, together we rise. The men yelled with him, as the scout yelled more target coordinates. Integrity trialed by flame, no matter the size. Fire. A yellow light explodes, and a blue beam ascends to the heavens for the purpose of destruction. For prosperity and expansion in the comrade who dies. Osmond yells. He thought about the men scrambling around the room, forced to fight because they were trapped in this asteroid-like cage. What would his baby sister think? Would she remember him when she was older? Or his younger brothers? Would they live spiteful of the company, thinking he and his brother died by some work error like his mother and father? They do not even know Noel and him are stationed in Orius K, let alone going to die fighting off unknown invaders. Another blast to a nearby cannon, and from the dome window, Osmond could see a station just like the one he was in get vaporized. We eat in the ship, we sink in the ship, ocean or skies. Fire. The scout roars and the yellow and blue light fused with a purple blast that tore away the dome ceiling. As if the blackness of space snatched it from the asteroid in disgust at humanity's futile attempts to exist outside our home planet. Together they formed into an unattainable vision that only the men on Orius K could have known. A blast that ends all. A blast that swallows the universe. His universe. And his brother Noel and the many other brave men that lost their lives fighting off what they believed to be a nefarious faction. What they believed. Through the manipulation and deliberate planning of a company. But this was no proxy war. This was entirely internal. But it was no mutiny either. It was a false flag operation meant to help Mulsko establish an army around Mars. Soldiers Mr. Bruck's administration could recruit and use at his disposal as Mulsko manhandles its way through the solar system. Soldiers and workers who do not need reimbursement. Because when the time comes, Mr. Bruck will rinse and repeat. Lorne watched as the color-coded card were raised, and the guests all filled into their respective lines. They poured out the cafeteria where their makeshift hammocks hung. He wondered about Graham as he did not see him anywhere. Why are we going to this corridor? A thick European accent asked. Lorne looked up to see Mr. Farrell looking at his tour guide inquisitively. Last second change of plans. The tour guide said, Looks like I am showing you all the drill shafts. Lorne did not think much of it. The irony of them being given special access after Mr. Farrell complained about the lack of transparency was almost worth laughing over. But the inner conflict of his assignment and his beliefs made it hard for Lorne to feel amused. If Mr. Farrell really wanted to expose this place, he could do it himself, Lorne thought. Because as for now, Lorne's only hope was an adversary with Mr. Farrell. And his friend is now gone because of Mr. Farrell's recklessness in dragging others into his futile pursuits. Lorne, Rupert said, embracing Lorne with welcoming handshake. I thought you would be sick of me? Lorne said while following him out to the elevator. No, you are a hit amongst the boys. Just be prepared because I got a few million questions I must ask you on their behalf, Rupert said, and the elevator doors closed. They scaled the ladder quickly, geared up fast. Before they knew it, they were in the drill's shuttle expanding into the abyss of blackness until the swirling of rocks revealed an even darker surface. When penetrated by the drill, the blackness was replaced with the distinct curvatures of caves, lined by the soft glow of green lights. They jumped out the shuttle. Rupert continued to play small talk, but unlike last time, it was Lorne who was being short. Not because he was worried he would say too much. It was because he was truly trying to take in fieldwork. He needed another Memoirs of the Refineries, but he was so conflicted he could hardly express a coherent thought to Rupert, who was asking about things Lorne did not really know about either. Not because simulation buffets and IM cinema didn't exist. It was because Lorne had never done any of these things, either on contrary to Mr. Bruck's naive statement in the workout room. So Lorne, where do you want to go check out? The main cave system, or do you want to see how the pumps get attached to the bottom of the drill? Rupert said to see Lorne walking off. He was looking over a black hole directly above him. It was a black tunnel that extended to unknown depths. But the angle did not make sense. Why would someone drill a tunnel directly above them? So Lorne tried to get a better look by standing on his toes. Nothing. So he hopped. Lorne, Rupert yelled as Lorne flew directly vertically as if he was a rocket-propelled man. Lorne watched as the black surfaces of the cave swallowed him into a continuous extension of ambiguously deep tunnel. Full-speed Lorne, in the midst of zipping through what felt like the asteroid's intestines, realized something right before the point of no return, that he was not flying upwards. He was falling down head first. He had jumped into a hole. That's gravity equalizers are synced differently from the rest of the cave. Lorne spread his legs and arms trying to slow his fall. He saw a light get closer. Unsure if it was another section of the cave illuminated by workers, Lorne quickly spread his arms and legs and began to break his descent. He rolled to position his body to fall feet first and spread further. Consequently, the process desperate attempts to break his fall. The friction pulled loose rocks, causing Lorne to smack his head and lose even more control of his velocity once more. Crack. It was black. Who are you? The skinny, wrinkled man yelled. Lorne gasped as his eyes fluttered around at the staggered shards protruding from the perimeter of his vision out the broken mask. Air, Lorne yelled. Another man emerged from behind the elder man who hovered over the panicked Lorne. He pulled out a small device and scanned Lorne's wrist tablet. Lorne G level, New Pittsburgh. The man said. His face was exposed enough to see he had some type of improvised oxygen mask attached to a tube dangling from the cave ceiling. Lorne yelled compulsively in the midst of his frantic efforts. Even while suffocating, Lorne could not go out as Lornol. Who are you? The man yelled again, shaking Lorne's collar with a hot welding rod near his face. What department is he nesting? I need to know if we should kill him. Kill me? Lorne gasped. He is not from Mulscork, but his whole family sure is. Looks like they even spent time here. The other man named Nesky said, trying to ease the stringy man named Cork. Okay, Cork said, discontinuing his shaking of Lorne's collar. I won't kill him. Air. Lorne gasped again. Though he could not prevent himself from hyperventilating in panic, he realized he was capable of breathing more than he expected. Why did you come down here? The man who scanned Lorne said. Clearly not a by-choice Nesky. Cork chimed back. Are you a fucking alien? Lorne said under his last breaths. How can you breathe down here? Cork pulled a tube dangling from a small hole in the cave ceiling and pressed it against Lorne's mouth. Lorne took a deep breath and felt life return to his body. He took several deep breaths and passed it back. Are you guys pirates or from a Jonko? Lorne asked the two men who hovered around him. You even know what a Jonko is? Cork spewed while inhaling the tube. Yeah, it is a pro, Lorne began. A pro. Cork interrupted Lorne obnoxiously. A pro, let me guess. Proxy war? Well, kinda. A company proxy war, right? Lorne realized he had been spun the same yarn and never questioned its thread. Cork passed the tube to Lorne and Lorne inhaled, but dropped it after causing it to swing back to its dangling position. Johnson County War. Nothing to fucking do with proxy wars. Just because the companies hate each other does not mean small business can be the sole fucking source of all blame. Cork spat when he talked. He wobbled over to the spouts and grabbed the oxygen tube and took a deep inhale. Back when the US, the United States, you know that, right? You are from New Pittsburgh after all. Back when it was new and Europeans expanded into the indigenous lands of the western side. A conflict erupted between independent farmers and cattle barons. Homesteaders and others just trying to expand into the newly explored Wyoming territory were causing issues for the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. Cork tried to continue, but Lorne stopped him the same way Junip did during his own compulsive tangents. Wait, Cork, what is a cattle baron? Lorne almost pleaded. Honestly, I do not know. But they monopolized cattle, which was a big part of the economy. Cork rubbed his forehead. Lorne grabbed the tube from him and inhaled. Cattle? Lorne said sheepishly. Cows. Damn it, Lorne. The thing beef flavoring is based off. Like hamburgers. Okay. So there were small cattle people and big cattle people. Lorne attempted to summarize, trying to prove his comprehension skills. The big cattle created the Wyoming Stock Grower Association as the more and more small private ranches opened. So, in order to take control, the barons gathered an army of hired guns to gather and prosecute the homesteaders in false cattle theft charges to remove their livestock competition. Turned out the spirit of the independent explorer is the one thing the barons were not ready for, as the homesteaders began fighting back, resulting in several bloody conflicts. Cork took a drag of the oxygen tube and passed it over to Lorne, who was starting to feel lightheaded. Breathe, boy, breathe. Lorne took a deep breath. So then, why did they call it Jonco? If it has nothing to do? Oh, it does. Humanity is bound to want to explore and separate ourselves from the shackles. It's perhaps our greatest reason to explore. Liberty was once valued. So much so, we personified it and made it a location. A promised land. Overpopulation has been the real reason to explore. Curiosity is nice to entertain, but it does not bring moons to life or asteroids into centers of commerce. Our desire to expand and explore is rooted in our desperate fight to not self-destruct in a war or plague. Lorne said, passing the tube back to Cork. Cork inhaled, laughed, and began again. We have had the same narrative expressed for so long we forgot to question it. And our society as a whole has conditioned us to take the side of the establishment. Because in the grand scheme of things, there is no purpose for society if the contents, the people, of the society are not cared for. So we pin ourselves against the independent survivors who dare to live in defiance. All while logic tells us that this establishment, that we all feel confident, could only be led by the unbiased opinion of machines that must be doing all this for the greater good. The greater goal. Cork stopped and waited. The greater goal. Lorne kept it going. We trusted the artificial intelligence to do the goal. Yet we have not yet discussed what the goal is. Cork responded. What is the goal? What do you think is the true directive? Lorne asked. Simple, Cork said while taking a long breath on the tube. Sustainment. Well, what is there to sustain if they do not give a shit about us? Lorne reached for the tube. The system. A system that relied on scarcity for centuries. A system that perpetuates the better version of itself, void of morals. A system that can allocate labor like the human body shifts around white blood cells on a wound. If the AI found it more fit to kill off all humans and replace us with spider monkeys, they would. And believe me, there would be humans gleefully gathering us into gas chambers on the AI's behalf, all for the sake of being one step higher than the rest of us in this unforgivingly shallow system. Lorne thought about what he said deeply. Then he thought about MITs. Then himself. We have a solar system of resources, enough metals to build citadels all over Jupiter's orbit, the tech to replace every last worker in these asteroids with androids. Hell, we could even terraform Earth back to normal given the resources. We could put gravitational equalizers that are smaller than the one on this rock and make entire cities within Earth like gravity vortexes on places like Mars. But harmony does not suit the greater agenda. Resources and revenue are hardly important this new era, especially when state has already handed over the power. So what do they need to sustain if it's not revenue or resources? Lorne asked. Labor. Not just labor. Good labor. Labor from principled people. Proud people. If that is the X factor, then why would AI that relies on the industry just appease the corporations with fulfilling these labor shortages? Why would they not just replace us with robots? Unfortunately, it has been found that we require the negative consequences of a competitive capitalist society. And society, well, we are known to drag the complacent into the town square to get beheaded, so we must occupy our devilish idle hand in order to not wake up to the madness. So you are saying in an era of abundant resources, the artificial intelligence is stifling our human experience to motivate us to keep expanding to ensure or its survival. Not only is it stifling most people, but it is even empowering others that seem to do everything in their power to take from others. Cork said, holding his hand up to Lorne's shoulder. This is a lot. Lorne said, do you tell everyone that falls down the hole this? No, but I do when I killed their family, Cork said sharply. Lorne flinched at the words and looked at Cork's comrade Nesky, who seemed also shocked. What the hell do you mean by that? Lorne asked. Your brothers? They worked for Mulsko, yes? Cork asked. Yes. On contrary to what you probably have been told. All current employees here are from one of two stations. And let's just say you don't look like you can roll your R's, or know what a pierogi is, Cork said dryly. Meaning? Lorne responded. Meaning Osmond and Noel, your two siblings that are deceased according to my scan, were actually stationed here before the attack. Nesky said, reading off his tablet. The crew we fired on because we were told they'd gone rogue after cutting off their communication. Cork said, my brothers were on this asteroid. I thought they died from a work accident in transit after their contract ended. Lorne said, puzzled. Mulsko shuttles only blow up when they want them to, or when someone on there is preferred dead. But you, amongst everyone else, were lied to. Cork responded, recognizing it was time to show some compassion. My brothers were mutineers? Lorne asked while using the air tube. Well, that's where I come in, Lorne. Upon breaching the drill, the remaining rebels were holding off in a fierce armed conflict. I and others heard something that could not be mistaken. What was it? Lorne asked. The mantra, Lorne, Cork said. They were ready to die defending Mulsko, and they were proud of it. Proud to be the company that was attacking them. Lorne felt his blood boil. You mean? When we sealed the drill in with Mulsmold, I was the one responsible for opening the drill ladder latch to place the pump inside, considering Fabian lost his eyes in combat. When the door opened, I saw a man who looked at me with as much bewilderment as I was in. He said, wait, you are Mulsko too? I asked him why did they betray us, and he said they told them that they were under attack by foreign opposition. I asked his name. He said Aleski. Then before I could do anything, the lever raised and they sealed the remaining men into the drill. Cork looked down and Nesky put his hand on his shoulder. He told me and few others what he saw. So we escaped into the caves, one shift bringing pumps we rigged to the oxygen chambers through an abandoned drill shuttle. That same shuttle I used to routinely sneak in and scavenge us some food and other supplies. Cork, being an ex-administrator, has most permissions granted on his tablet. With my ability to tweak the software, I have basically been given a skeleton key. Nesky finished for the remorseful Cork. Where are the others? Lorne asked. Dead. Cork answered, breaking his solemn demeanor. Life in defiance is dangerous amongst cattle barons, big hamburger people. You are Global Examiner. I know you are in a tight position, but you must do what you must to expose this situation. Nesky said. Lorne, still in shock about the truth of his brother's demise, was overwhelmed. Was this another attempt at bringing him further into a hopeless situation when Mr. Bruck was offering him a way out? There is nothing I can do now, Lorne said, reaching for the tube again, but Nesky snatched it while looking at Lorne fiercely. This tablet I have from Cork has been altered to allow me to see into encrypted files that only the very top can see. I have memos of the AI placement rigging. I have memos of the false flag attacks and the orders to fire from both parties who were lied to by the highest of administration. Proof of the murdering of employees by suffocating them in locked-off corridors as intercoms use sound mufflers to drown out their cries. I have proof falsifying of audits and the massive amounts of product they are stashing to create scarcity. Nesky said, what am I supposed to do? Crawl up this cave with an additional wrist tablet and assume no one will notice the entire trip? Lorne said, now snatching back the tube and inhaling. No, that would be tough, even for a guy as slick as me. But what I do have is the information made into a drive. Drive? You can't just aircast it to my tablet. Security will spot the off-limits data on you with a simple scan. That is why we are doing this old school. He passed the small chip to Lorne. Look, no promises. I have a family I am working to protect. Believe me, I am pissed about what you all told me, but I am not like you all. I cannot hide from the reality in some underground cavity awaiting to be killed. Nor can I sacrifice my life, my potential on such a hopeless goal. Lorne said, your life and potential must be very high in value. Tell me, Lorne, do you think you are better or more valuable than the next man? Cork asked, but Nesky interrupted with a hand gesture, knowing now is not. the time to chastise Lorne? No. But I do believe I apparently want to live more than you. And that is enough for me to continue on pushing the direction I am going while you stir in anger in your nook and crannies. Wants to live more. Oh, the mark of superiority. He likely regurgitates. Hard to believe you don't work for moles. Spewing the same trash he told all us admins, Cork said, turning around. I need to get back now, Lorne said, tucking the chip beneath his chest plate. But I would not suggest going the way you came, Cork said. You can take our shuttle entrance. But please, Lorne, don't rat us out. I only have a few more chips. Maybe the next person that falls down our hole will be less reluctant to help, Nestle said. Show me the shuttle entrance so I can get back, Lorne said. New Pittsburgh. The civil worker known as Sevilla walked into the local commune rec centre to hear the squeaking of athletic shoes against the polished. Floors. Children varying in ages seemed to exist in a bliss of game. They moved through the court tactically calling out each other for passes while the opposing team blocks. Sevilla was admiring the sanctuary of peace that these children had for escape. Escaping a world that is the calculatingly cold reality of a corrupted meritocracy. Her admiration was stifled by the sight of a floating cube making its way through the children and to Sevilla. Hey. Hey. Who are you and what are you doing in my recreation center? We do not authorize guests. In this floating cube-shaped drone was a monitor that a stout-looking man, though all that was revealed was a thick neck holding a large head with sunglasses strapped over his eyes. I am sorry to bother you, but do you have an idea on the whereabouts of Juniper is? Sevilla asked. Look, I am not just giving children's locations away to strangers, the man in the drone said. He stepped back away from the camera enough to expose a tightly fitted athletic shirt with a name tag that said Mr. Z. I am a civil worker assigned to her in this commune, Sevilla said, trying to be polite. Oh, Junip. The floating cube said, yes. Well, I hate to be the one who informs you, but she is no longer a member of this commune. Excuse me? Sevilla could not believe this. Yes, she was transferred to a pre-specialization substitution education for an unpaid internship program to get an early start for the corporation. There was empathy in his voice. The corporation? Sevilla asked, knowing the answer. Our despot, the man in the drone said. Molsko? Do you know where I can find a brother? Sevilla asked with no restraint in sadness. Guess that makes both out of orbit now, right? Not sure which one you are asking about, but Cedric just got transferred to a service job on a Molsko Sprinter shuttle to Mars. Wait, sir. They came and took Cedric and Juniper over a night, Sevilla asked. Yeah, it was out of the ordinary. My sons are pretty sore about them taking little Junip. She certainly helped my boys pass their literature classes. Her eldest brother Noel and Osmond, rest their souls, were great athletes too. Could never get that out of Lorne or said, though. Mr. Z spoke if he was mourning them all. Do you know where Lorne is? She asked. Well, from what Junip was saying, he is in some asteroid with Molsko. But I would imagine you could get in contact with him from the GE. Mr. Z said, now rotating his view to watch over. The children. Global Examiner? She asked. You do want to get a hold of Lorne, right? I doubt he knows what happened. Yes, he should know. Sevilla, overwhelmed in grief, walked away and out the recreation center. The drone sat there a moment. He wondered if she heard him say, good luck.